Welcome to the MOOC on Economics of Gender and Development. Today we are having the fourth week and the module 11, which is titled as Gender and Social System. We have, during the last 3 weeks, discussed the essentials of gender both as an idea as well as an analytical category. We have also examined how introduction of gender as an explicit analytical category can bring interesting and enriching insights in understanding economic behavior and actions of individual economic agents. So far, we have seen that men and women behave and act differently, not merely due to the differences in their personal traits, rather, to a large extent, these differences are actually socially constructed through a wide variety of processes which we have called gender socialization. And this part has been covered in the week first and the second under different modules. We have also seen gender socialization happens at levels of family, schools, community, and at large in the society. So there are different levels where this process of gender socialization happens and which actually tries to attach different meanings, different sanctions to the behavior and actions to men and women. Clearly, gender socialization is intimately related to the social system and organization. That is how a society is structured and organized and how an individual is placed in relation to them. So this is what we will try to cover today. And in this module, therefore, we will take our discussion a bit further on this theme. And specifically, we will try to discuss the 4 key issues today. The first, we will try to look at what is meant by social system. What are the key ideas and components of it. Secondly, we will try to examine what are the most significant aspects of social system in India. Thirdly, we will try to look at how does social system creates social divisions and hierarchies and how do they relate to the concept of gender. And finally, we will try to understand what does patriarchy mean and how does it implicate our understanding of society and economy. So these are the 4 key themes within which we will try to limit our discussion today, and then when we will follow up, then we will introduce other ideas associated with these key ideas. Let me come to the first part of today's discussion, that is, what is meant by social system. The society consists of individuals, no doubt, but mere collection of individuals does not make a society. Suppose if you put together 100 people in one place, that collection of 100 individuals are not going to create a society in itself. Society includes, along with individual, a complex network of relationships, institutions, values and norms that regulate human behavior and actions. The concept of social system helps us understand how society functions, maintains order and responds to change that is happening around us. It also explains the origin of social inequality, stratification and gender relations. So therefore, we need to understand social system in a bit in detail so that we can be better placed to understand what does it mean and how it implicate the different economic behavior among men and women. So what is social system? A social system refers to an organized and interrelated set of social relationships, roles, institutions and norms that function together to maintain social order and continuity. So it indicates everything. It actually accommodates the relationships, it accommodates the roles, it accommodates the institutions and also the norms and values. Altogether, that makes us a society. A social system is the way, if we try to sort of simplify it, is the way people live together in an organized manner, where each person and institution has a role to play, defined role to play, and where rules, customs, relationships guide the behaviors and actions of individuals. Therefore, a social system consists of individuals performing roles according to socially accepted norms within an organized structure. So, if we try to understand the social system, then only we will try to see how individuals are going to behave or act in a particular setting within a particular context. Now, if we look at some different important definitions of social system, it is coming from different scholars. We have all, maybe familiar with the most famous definition of social system given by Talcott way back in 1951, and then range of scholars like Radcliffe, the Kingsley-Davies, Kant, then of course the Nikoff, and then the Martin. These definitions basically talks about almost all the things, and this chart presents those definitions along with the key elements and main features and emphasis on which these definitions are relying on. We will take the first definition from Talcott, where he says that a social system is a set of interacting individuals whose relations are governed by the shared norms and values. So the key elements here is the norms, values which are shared, the roles, the cultural patterns, and most importantly, the interaction that happens among the individuals, both individually and as well as collectively. So main feature and emphasis of this definition is the functional integration, the stability, the value consensus, the system equilibrium, and so on and so forth. So therefore, each of these definitions, you can look at the chart where all the definitions are given coming from prominent sociologists and scholars who try to define social system in their own way, but nonetheless, they have emphasized on certain key points and key elements, and of course, putting emphasis on certain important things. For instance, suppose if you go to suppose the definition coming from Auguste Comte, who says that society is a complex whole made up of interdependent parts of the working together. So it is actually basically the interdependency, that how individuals are dependent on each other. And of course, another point is the unity and order which is to be there. So in a sense, that when we'll try to look at the various definitions coming from different scholars and different sociologists regarding social system, the one can agree on certain common ideas and elements. For instance, if we look at all the definitions coming from different scholars, that we will find some of the common ideas and elements. The first is the interdependency, the idea of interdependency, that individuals by themselves cannot be considered as society or part of society. They are of course part of society, but when we say that they are part of the society, it is their interdependency among themselves which makes a society. So therefore, that's the first point that we need to understand. Then we have to talk about the social relationship. That means that we need to interact with different individuals. The one individual cannot be the representative in itself, autonomous in itself. They will have to relate. They will have to relate with other individuals, and they have to interact with them. So therefore, it is the social relationship. That is the second point. Third, that there are some shared norms and values which will try to guide and regulate the behavior. This is the most important part of social system. Then of course, based on this, then you have some specific roles and positions and duties assigned to different individuals, which we consider that as a society, the individuals are supposed to perform or comply with, and that is the roles and then statuses. And then we need to have institutional structures like family, religion, economy, polity, so and so forth. So therefore, these are also there. And then we need to why do we need all these things? In order to maintain the social continuity and order. So order and stability is the other point. And then finally the functional unity, that all parts together are responsible for social survival. So when we see in this framework, then we will identify some common ideas and common elements, and each of these common ideas and elements put together gives us a sense of social system, that this is what social system is comprised of, that these are the things which will be accommodated when we try to discuss or examine the social system in a society. All right. So this is the first part. So that the first part was the understanding the social system, what it is, what are the key elements, what are the key components of it. So we have seen that these are the 7 components of it, and then this all together gives us a social system. And this social system not only guide us in our behavior, but also expects certain normal or usual or common expected, anticipated behavior from us. All right. So this is the first part. The second part, we will try to discuss the Indian social system. We will use some illustrative examples, that what are the different things that we need to discuss when we talk about Indian social system. The Indian social system is unique due to its historical processes and cultural diversity. All right, we know that, most of us. And then we will have different examples of the social system. The most prominent one is the caste system. For instance, caste is the most distinctive feature of Indian society. And when we talk about the caste system, what is important to recognize is that the caste system is a rigid form of social stratification based on birth. That if you are born to a caste, then you are actually attached with that caste. There is no way that you can actually transcend the boundaries of that caste or surpass the boundary of the caste, right? So it is traditionally, we know that there are 4 varnas: Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, Sudras. And if anybody who is outside the fourfold of this caste system, then we place them as the untouchable formerly, and now we call them Dalits. So therefore, these are the lowest stratum of the society, and then all the 4 varnas are hierarchically placed in terms of privileges, social privileges and expected roles, and then we have to follow, and then individuals are born into it, that you do not have any choice, but you have to conform to the expected roles which are supposed to be performed by different varnas. All right. And then when we look at the caste system in India, how it functions, then we will usually understand that caste system determines the occupation, social status, marriage, social mobility, everything in Indian society. So therefore, how Indian society is organized or ordered or structured is based on a certain system, social system, and the most prominent one is, of course, the caste system. So that's one. All right. Now, another thing is that the structure is also maintained by a system of family. And then in Indian society, if you look at traditionally, it is organized around a joint family. Of course, the very recent times, we are moving towards more nuclear families. We are dispensing with the idea of joint family because of the certain changes. But nonetheless, one of the still large part of the Indian society, particularly in the rural areas, we still believe in the system of joint family. And in the joint family, we believe that many families together they live, collective living, and then there is an economic cooperation. Why do we need joint family? Because of particular structure of the economy. For instance, suppose if you have an agrarian structure or rural, agriculture-based society, then we will realize the kind of support that can be provided by the joint family system as such, right? Then also there are certain values, which is the respect for elders, and then also we have the system which actually tries to push forward the idea of patriarchy. All right, the patriarchal authority. We will come to patriarchy later, but one of the example of social system is that the how family is structured. Caste is, of course, is one. The second is the kind of values, kind of organization which happens around a family, and that is mostly the joint family system. As I have said, there are certain changing contexts because of which now the joint family is now reduced, and then we are having more and more of the nuclear families. But nonetheless, we are having large part of the rural areas still rely on the joint family system. All right. So that's the second example. We can also think about the example of religion, for instance, because religion is something which is, even though personal, and then it relates to your personal faith, but still plays a crucial role in shaping social norms, rituals, moral values, and even gender roles in India. Hinduism, Islam, Christianity, Sikhism, Buddhism, and all other faiths influence individual behavior based on certain the values which are felt by the religion, particular religion, and this is directly linked to the position and status of women according to the religious faith. We will discuss on this in a later stage, but nonetheless, it is important to understand that the religion is one very important component of Indian social system, that how religion is placed in terms of defining the morality, defining the values and norms and cultural expectations, and also the gender roles. The fourth one can be taken as an example of village community. For instance, suppose Indian villages function as a self-sufficient social system in their own economic, political, and cultural, within their own economic, political, and cultural institution, and then position and status of women within that village community is also important, and these are defined mostly in terms of customary laws, for instance. All right. So many of the tribal societies still follow the customary laws, and then we can examine those laws, seeing the position and status of women in around that particular the village community. So therefore, family, religion, village community, caste system, all these are part of the important part of Indian social system. All right. So these are sort of examples of these things. Now let me come to the third component of it. Why we are bothered about all these things? It is because that this social system can actually give rise to the social differentiation and hierarchies. All right. It will place individuals in a different way. It will create some hierarchies within the society, and then it will lead to the stratification, and then this stratification essentially will lead in to the different forms of inequality. For instance, caste hierarchy, if we look at it, it is based on the birth and also the concept of purity, ritual purity. So it creates a very rigid social division. There is no way you can actually transcend the boundary of the caste, and it provides the unequal access to resources. So therefore, there is a clear hierarchy which is placed on the Indian society by the system of caste. You have also the class, which is more economic in nature, based on income, occupation, and education. So unlike caste, of course, the class is relatively flexible. You can move from one class to another, but still there are distinct divisions around the classes. Then, of course, we have the divide between rural and urban. It is creating differences in the lifestyle, education, employment, social opportunities, and it also creates the inequality between rural and urban population. Then, of course, based on the political and economic power, we have the system of power hierarchies, where powers are concentrated among the certain groups, and all the decisions are taken by them, resources are mobilized and used by them, and then all other people are placed at the margin. So these are marginalized. So therefore, there is a clear hierarchy which is coming from the power. And of course, finally, we have the gender hierarchy. The Indian society has traditionally been patriarchal, placing men in dominant positions and women in subordinate roles. So therefore, what is important to understand, you follow the sequence, that the social system, what does it mean? Then we have understood what are the important ideas related to social system in India. And then finally, we have understood that how the social systems are related to social stratification, differentiation, and hierarchy. And as a part of it, we need to understand the gender in this whole differentiation and hierarchy. And then we will try to link this up with the gender inequality that we see in different indicators. All right. So this is the way we have to understand social systems, and we have to respond to different kinds of the ideas. So obviously, then we need to understand that why do you need to examine social system if we want to see gender. Because the gender roles, expectation and inequalities are products of social system, all right, which is coming from out of blue. It is actually a product of time and society. It is the product of social system that defines different roles, define different expectation and inequalities, what is masculine, what is feminine. It allocates the roles and responsibilities among men and women. It distributes and shares the power and resources. It legitimizes the inequality through the apparatus of culture and tradition and so on and so forth. So therefore it is essential that we need to understand the kind of social system that we have and then try to see how these social systems are related to the hierarchies, differentiation, stratification, including that of gender, right? So therefore the social system we need to understand as a reproducer of gender inequality, all right? The gender inequality we can see around, it is visible to us. But what lies beneath this inequality is the social system. So this is the product, the inequalities that we see around us between men and women is actually the product of that social system. So unless and until we understand what is lying behind this inequality in terms of the social system in practice, it will be impossible for us to understand or decipher that why the gender inequality exists in our society. So it is very important that we need to appreciate the social system as a reproducer of gender inequality that we see around. Let me give you some very quick examples. All right. If we look at the family system, as I have said that Indian families are mostly patriarchal in nature. When we say this, then we can give the preference for some sex selective practices, how the sons are socialized, how girls are socialized. Girls, you will see that girls are socialized into obedience, domestic work and caregiving roles. And then you can have some evidence in an example. For instance, suppose you will have unequal nutrition for boys and girls, early marriage for girls, practice of dowry, expectation from unpaid domestic labor from the women. So therefore, within the family, there are certain patriarchal structures which exist, and that decides what are the roles and responsibilities which are supposed to be done by men and women. All right, so that's the first example. In the second example, I have already defined it, caste system and gender. It is important to understand that when we have the caste system, it reinforces the gender inequality. If we look at the upper caste women, then we will see that there is there's very strict control over sexuality, honor and purity norms, that these are to be followed by women, particular in the upper caste, whereas the lower caste women will face the intersectionality between caste and gender, but at the same time they will also be exposed to different kinds of economic exploitation and sexual violences. All right. For example, manual scavenging will be done largely performed by the Dalit women, who are the lowest stratum of the society. We do not expect that upper caste women will be allowed to do those things, but at the same time, if you want to go for intercaste marriages, then there will be honor killing kind of thing, so that you can protect the purity of the caste. And then we believe that it is a responsibility of women that they do not go to other caste and then try to transcend the borders which are limiting their caste hierarchies. So therefore, it is very important to understand how caste system and gender interplay with each other. All right. Similarly, the religious and cultural norms, the religious traditions often reinforce the patriarchal values. You can see how different religious rituals and inheritances are dominated by male, and women are portrayed as the bearers of honor, morality, responsible for family prestige. So there is a moral and cultural burden upon women, whereas the main dominance is given to men. You can see the examples from exclusion of women from most of the religious places, and practices like parda, sati, historically of course, and then restriction on widow remarriage, etc., are some examples where we can see how the differences are created in the name of religion and caste culture. So when we talk about the social system as a reproducer of gender inequality, then you can see certain mechanisms like how do you socialize, how do you culturally define the norms and the values, what are the different institutions that will try to perpetuate these kind of values, what are the different power structures which are being created, and how, as an ideology, patriarchy is seen as something normal and natural. All right. So therefore, all these things are part of the social system. When we talk about the socialization, we have already seen that how gender roles are taught from the childhood, right from the family, household to the institutions and the schools and colleges and society at large. Cultural norms which will try to largely justify male dominance over everything. And then you have the institutions like family, religion, economy, which will also reinforces the hierarchy which are being created by the system. Then you have the power structure where male control the resources and authority. And then finally, of course, the ideology where all these things in the name of patriarchy is presented as a normal or natural. That anybody who is trying to deviate is seen as something which is not normal or unnatural, right? So therefore, it is important to understand this. And this takes us to understanding patriarchy. And this is the last part of our discussion today, that we need to understand what is patriarchy. Because the social system, they're largely underlying these different forms of patriarchy. All right? Within all the things that we have discussed, that what is underlying, it is the ideology of patriarchy. All right? So therefore, it is important to understand what is it and how does it implicate the gender relations. Patriarchy comes from two words. Patri means father and then archy means rule. So it is a rule of the father. All right? Literally, it means rule of the father. Patriarchy is a social system in which men hold the primary power and dominance and over women in social, economic, political and cultural spheres. It is a system where men are given by the social system existing the more power, authority and privilege over women, both in the family and the society. And therefore, patriarchy is not just about individual male dominance. It is not about individual male who is dominating, but it is a systematic and institutional arrangement supported by the institutions like family, religion, education, economy, law, culture, tradition, which accord this dominance to male in general in the society. So it operates through customs, beliefs, rules, and social norms, and then it tries to define what men should do and what women should do. So this is what is the patriarchy. It functions within the existing culture and existing beliefs and values and norms, and it tries to provide privileges and the positions of power and authority to male compared to the female or men over women. Now, when we try to see a patriarchy as an ideology, it promotes the belief that men are naturally superior, these are more strong, the women are the emotional and dependent by contrast, and men should be therefore decision makers because they are bold and not emotionally driven. Women are emotional and dependent, therefore their roles should be more caregivers. And then this distinction between this kind of thing, where male is given the authority and the position of power, to be seen as something normal and natural. And this is the ideology of patriarchy. And then different social systems and different key ideas and components of it tries to further reinforce, sustain this ideology of patriarchy. All right? So therefore, and then we are taught with these beliefs from the childhood, and then we accept that this is something which is a common sense. And that is why we think that the boy should be more strong and assertive, and a girl should be taught to be more obedient and caring. Any girl who tries to be strong and assertive are seen as something which is not girl-like, right? So that's the ideology of patriarchy. If we try to understand the key features of patriarchy, then we will see that there is a feature of male dominance. The male control resources and decisions, and that contrast female subordination. The women are expected to obey and adjust, and then male are supposed to be controlling the women's labor, and that is why there is many unpaid domestic work burden which are supposed to be done by women. And then, of course, the control of her sexuality, how to restrict women's mobility and choices over different reproductive affairs, and the property, resources are to be inherited to males. And then there is a the gender-based division of labor, that should be done by the male and what should be done by the female. So this is the feature of ideology of patriarchy, and then we need to understand how this ideology are sustained and maintained by different social systems that we have. All right, so that's the idea. So, and then finally, when we try to see that what is the gender inequality and patriarchy relation, then we will try to understand that patriarchy leads to systematic gender inequality in the following ways. For instance, suppose if we look at education, then we will see that why women are not educated much, lower literacy among women. So that's an indicator. But the underlying it, there's a system of social system which actually tries to say that women are not to be educated much, right? So in the health, we can see malnutrition, poor healthcare economy. We can see that most of the unpaid labor is done by female, and even if they are paid, there's a huge wage gap. In power, political underrepresentation, safety, violence against women, because it is seen as something to be oppressed, controlled, and of course the freedom, the restriction of choices on the lot of dimension, including of course that of reproductive choices. So therefore this is how it is there. Of course we can challenge the patriarchy, and it is happening. Patriarchy makes inequality appear between male and female as natural, normal, and which is why it is difficult to challenge. But nonetheless, people are challenging it. And then there is a changing role of education of women, legal reforms, women movement, economic participation, awareness and activisms are happening all around. So therefore, even if still exists, but we are having changes within the social system itself. When we have already introduced the idea of feminist economics and feminism in general, we will see how these challenges are coming from different feminist perspectives. The liberal feminist will try to ensure the equal rights and opportunities for both men and women. Marxist feminist will try to say that patriarchy is somehow related to capitalism, mode of production. Radical feminist will try to see that the patriarchy is the root of all oppression. So therefore, if we want to come out of oppression, then you have to confront with the patriarchy. And of course, the socialist feminist will try to see how gender and patriarchy is related to the question of class, for instance. All right. So therefore, different challenges are coming from different strands of feminism, and it is changing, but at the same time, it is also challenged by different ideas and ideologies. So let me conclude today's discussion by bringing 4 very important takeaway points. The first point, that social system is the foundation upon which society functions. It shapes the individual behavior, social relationships, and institutional functioning. The second point, that while it is ensured that social system will bring about the social order and continuity, it has also generated inequalities and discrimination. In most of the cases, at the core of the social system, there is a deep-rooted ideology of patriarchy determining gender roles and power relations, where male are placed over women and women are seen as something subordinate to male. And that is why it is important that critical understanding of the social system we need to have if we want to address the issues of gender inequality, bring about social justice and sustainable development. So this is in a nutshell today's discussion, and then we hope that this has been useful for you, and we will take some of the issues in this week in greater detail. Thank you very much.